Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Elvenking, Reader of the Runes-Rapture, out April 28th on AFM Records. This album has 11 tracks, 54 minutes in length, and this is the band's 11th full-length studio album. They are an Italian melodic power folk metal band. Now this is part 2 in a trilogy concept surrounding Reader of the Runes, but this album goes into a much darker place. More to come on that. First, let me tell you about the design. I love how this album is put together. When you have a concept record, it's important to tell the story. It's important to captivate the listener's imagination with the story they're telling you and keep you connected as you move along each and every single song. Sometimes the best way to do that is to put the singles in the beginning of the album, or have the beginning of the album become the singles, because it gives you a sense of familiarity the moment you press play on the album. And having the 3 opening songs as singles does just that. You know what you're getting yourself into, you'll take your guard down, you're able to better immerse yourself into the experience, into the record, into the sound, into the concept, and then when you start to discover the record, you're already in it, and then it becomes very hard for you to disconnect or turn off the switch. An album that also has a lot of ebbs and flows, as you would expect from a concept storytelling style record, so that makes the album feel even more dynamic, even more fluid. I really enjoyed this idea, I really enjoyed this design, and having those 3 singles right from the get-go was the best way to get me to understand and to feel like this concept and this album had something for me to get out of. Once you get into the sound, obviously the folk and power metal experience is definitely the backdrop of this record. But like I said earlier, this is a dark sounding album, ominous at times. The beauty of it is that they didn't use the same elements to create that darkness. They used different elements throughout the record to really allow that darkness to come into the surface. Because when you look at this record, it still sounds epic. It still has light in it. It has great anthems. It has great hymn style songs with great backing vocals and choirs. And like I said, epic sound all around. So it's an album that has a lot of light. But that darkness becomes the common denominator that showcases itself coming from different angles, from different starting points, allowing you to see how all of these different songs really connect with one another outside of the concept, moving in and more into the mood, feel, atmosphere, and even sound as far as the connections are concerned. And within that sound, you have to talk about the drums, you have to talk about the keys and the folk elements, and definitely the guitars. These are the cornerstones of this record. Now the drums are robust but not overpowering on this album, and that is important because it allows the overall footprint of the album to be wide but not necessarily depending on heaviness to push the drums into the forefront and to push the drums forward and the tracks coming forward by default. So I like the more subdued at times drum sound that the album has, but I also enjoyed the substance that the drum sound had. The drums felt alive on this album. They felt like they were the soul of the record. There was definitely a sense of filling in all the spaces with the overall drum approach, and it was one that captivated my attention and added incredible value to the overall song compositions that this record offers. As far as the keys and the folk elements, I really enjoyed the orchestrations, I really enjoyed the violins and all the folky elements that come to the forefront when those violins are present. I think a lot of the darkness on this album comes from the guitar sound and the execution of that guitar sound, but the orchestrations and violins and the folky elements in general really added a lot of darkness as well. They created almost a 4th dimension to what the sound is all about. It was really easy to understand where you are in the story and what's happening around you. You could almost visualize it because those elements really created this extra dimension, this extra layer that made the songs come to life right in front of you. So their power and what they add to the quality of the album is undeniable, as it is undeniable the quality that they add to the overall sound and to the overall sound experience. Not always overpowering, just the same as the drums, very subtle at times, and then in some cases really creating a sense of domination and pushing the songs forward while still allowing room for the guitars and everything else to have a role to play. I enjoyed this approach because it didn't feel like the album was overly symphonic or filled with orchestrations or even overly folky. It's an album that has so many different faces depending on where you are within the songs and where you are within the record. and the ability to have the keys and violins to have this kind of morphing aspect, the ability to stand on their own but also blending in with everything else, was really important for this album to have a rich sound all around. A rich sound that also depends heavily on the guitars. The guitars sound phenomenal throughout the entire record, sometimes pushing that power metal essence into the forefront, higher tempos, higher energy, a little bit brighter, sometimes a little bit more melodic, and in that melody bringing some folkiness into the picture as well, and also allowing that darkness to finally rise to the surface and see the darker side of their sound, and definitely the darker side of this concept. So the volatility, the controlled volatility that the guitars give to the sound experience is undeniable, and it's definitely one of the highlights of the record. I'm not going to say that this is a guitar-centric album because I don't feel like it is, but the power and the impact that the guitar sound all around has on the record is undeniable. So I really enjoyed this album from that point of view because it's a very well created record, it's a very well balanced record, understanding when you need to peak, understanding when you need to drop, what element can take a main role in one song and then using a completely different one in another track while still keeping some of the similarities of the structures alive. This kind of dynamic movement makes an album feel very connected from song to song, and it still gives individuality to each and every single track. Now vocally, this is an album that matches the epic experience that this record offers. When this record gets big, it is big. When this record keeps moving and pushes you forward, it moves you forward. When this record needs to come down and be a little bit slumber, it does that as well. And the vocals follow that same pattern. They morph with the surroundings. They match the surroundings. I really enjoyed the layers on the vocals. A lot of the times you have a big song and you don't want to necessarily change the dynamic of the vocal performance, but by adding layers, by adding texture to the vocals, you really make it sound like the vocals all around are a lot bigger. Some of the choirs work really well as well, specifically in songs that have more of that anthem hymn vibe. That's exactly what you need, and that's exactly what you got. Some songs that have some stripped down moments to go with a more warm, earthy tone works really well as well. So this is an album that is as dynamic as it is musically, is as dynamic vocally. A real complete album. Outstanding. When you think about a concept record, the way I define a great concept album is not just an album that connects with me in terms of the story that's telling me and allows me to always feel like I'm on the edge of my seat to see where's the next song is going to take me. That's a really important aspect of any concept record. Where you can make it great is when you allow the songs to stand on their own and be as good as individual tracks, not necessarily needing the concept, but when put into the concept, they work flawlessly as well. So this is a very dynamic record, even from that point of view, because you can go from first to last and enjoy the album tremendously, or you can just listen to a song here and a song there, and you're still going to enjoy this album tremendously. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with the Cursed Cavalier, a great guitar-driven song if I've ever seen one. The violin beneath the guitars, beneath the sound, with this folky melodic tune to it, really adds flavor, really adds value to the experience, and injects into a more driven song that more earthy, folky elements that's really important in order to create that texture within the song. Also a very vocally textured track as well. And when you put a vocally textured track with a vocally sounding track, you have a song that has a lot of volume. Not necessarily heavy, but the volume is massive. It creates this epic image in front of you as far as what's happening within the lyrical content and within the part of the story that the song is telling you. It almost makes the song feel heavy, even though it's not necessarily heavy for heavy sakes. So it also has a great guitar solo that matches the brighter side of the song. This is a song that has a lot of brightness to it. There's not a lot of dark in here. It's still there, but it's more underlining darkness. The solo represents the brighter spot of the track, and then closing with a guitar sound that drove the whole song really allows you to see how well this track is connected, even though it's a song that offers a lot of ebbs and flows. Next you have Covenant. Let me just start off by saying great bass. The bass on this track is phenomenal because it creates a sense of balance between what the drums are doing, between what the guitars are doing, and a lot of the darkness that I've talked about on this record. This is one of those songs that it's not hidden, it's not subtle, it's at the surface. and the bass is doing an amazing job really pushing that darkness to that surface. It's a heavy, dark sounding, feeling song from start to finish. The violins even add a little bit of melodic darkness to it. It's interesting the aspect that they add, because they bring a sense of brightness and melody because they're so gentle in terms of the sound. But when you start to analyze the sound and how that sound makes you feel, it actually makes you feel like you are going towards a much darker place. So it has this duality of aspects to it that works really well in a song like this. You're able to add to that thickness and at the same time using a more light and brighter element to add to it. So I really enjoy that aspect of the song. It has a lot of vocal layers as well. It has a dark hymn vibe from start to end, a song that really enhances the sense of ceremony. Thinking about the Covenant, thinking about ceremonies, this song comes together as such, and that's why you have this dark hymn vibe from start to end, not just from a vocal performance standpoint, but even from the sound as well. Last but not least, Red Mist. Now this is an interesting track because it goes full circle, but it goes full circle with a huge peak in the middle. So it's a song that starts in a valley, it peaks in the middle, and then it drops down back again to another valley. It's almost like a mountain. It's built like a pyramid in terms of the design. Like I said, as it starts as it ends, and it starts off with warm vocals, a warm sound, a really stripped down ballad that makes you feel very connected with earth. It makes you feel very connected with your surroundings. And then the song becomes epic. The song grows, it morphs, it starts to become larger than life, almost like a volcano erupting. It's just a track that just becomes very powerful. It loses a little bit of that more earthy, stripped down ballad approach, and it becomes a little bit more of a power ballad, but in the heavier sense or in the faster sense of that term. Definitely what you would expect from a power ballad chorus, if you will, is pretty much the middle of the song. And then it returns back to that more stripped down, earthy ballad feel as it starts, as it ends. So it's a very interesting song because it takes you on an incredible ride, a ride that just goes from 0 to 100 and then back to 0 in a blink of an eye. I really enjoy this track because of the design that it has, and then obviously the execution that it offers. This is it, Elvenking with Reader of the Runes-Rapture, out April 28th on AFM Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.